Chinese EV manufacturers have yet to capture a significant market share in Canada. Although figures show EV imports from China were worth around $1.6 billion in 2023, and much of those are believed to be Teslas made in Shanghai. Canada's biggest port, Vancouver, saw more than 44,000 cars imported from China. That's a 460% jump year on year. And 2023 was when Tesla started shipping Shanghai-made EVs to Canada. The tariffs come as Chinese EV maker BYD prepares to enter the market. BYD established a Canadian corporate entity last spring and reportedly plans to make a market debut as early as next year. Well, Paul Nieuwenhuis is an independent automotive analyst. Thanks ever so much for coming on the show. Now, look, Canada's tariffs bring the country into line with similar measures from the United States and from the EU. Why is Canada imposing these tariffs on Chinese EVs?
Well, I mean, as you say, it's similar to the US situation. And of course, the Canadian industry, car industry, is closely linked and closely integrated with the American car industry. It's in Ontario, right next to Michigan, the Great Lakes area, where the large car manufacturers are based. And the car manufacturers themselves tend to be non-Canadian owned. I mean, it's American or Japanese owned. But Canada also has a large body of automotive suppliers, many of whom are Canadian owned, including big ones like Magna, for example. I think there's an additional thing. Canada has an important bus and coach industry, which is also trying to move to electric buses. And that's an area where Chinese companies like Yutong, for example, are very strong. So that's an additional little angle. It's a small market, but still, they are one of the big players in North America. Provo in Quebec is, for example.
Well, China is an important trading partner for Canada, but I mean, is there a market for Chinese car brands? I mean, you mentioned buses and some parts, but what about the car brands in Canada?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, as we've seen in Europe, they're making inroads as well, and companies like BYD and a number of other Chinese companies now make world-class electric cars. It'll take a while to build up a credible distribution network, especially in bigger markets like Canada. But certainly the product is just about there. And of course, you mentioned the Teslas already, many of which are made in China and imported from China. So that already exists, that market.
I mean, these measures are going to affect brands, as you mentioned, like Tesla. Couldn't they just increase production elsewhere, outside Canada, to get around this?
Well, that is a possibility. It also reminds me very much, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the 1980s when various countries around the world, including Europe, sort of imposed quotas on Japanese cars, for example. And that was very much subject to regular renegotiation. And it's quite possible that this 100% tariff from Canada is really an opening gambit in a negotiating strategy. One of the side effects of the quotas on Japanese cars was that the Japanese increasingly started manufacturing near their target market. So we've got transplant factories here in the UK, for example, but also in North America. So you wonder whether that is going to be a solution for companies like BYD.
So when China says that Canada's actions are protectionism, is it?
Well, yes, they are. But, I mean, they're trying to build an electric vehicle supply chain. And, of course, the West has to some extent been caught out by China's rapid development of electric vehicles. And some of us have been warning for years, but there we go. So what they're trying is trying to protect the growing electric vehicle supply chain. And the Canadians have quite a credible supply chain for batteries, for example, right from raw materials to actual battery manufacturing. That is up and coming, and they obviously want to protect those assets and those developments until they expose it to the open global market. So yes, to that extent, it is protection. It's understandable protection.
Paul Nieuwenhuis, thank you very much.